Some places on Earth are gifted with pristine water that glistens when the sun hits it. Many times when we talk about sea, it refers to water, and rightly so. Ironically, there's a place close to the Mediterranean Sea where the word sea doesn't refer to water, but sand and a large amount of salt. But for years, individuals have tried to make sure this sea of sand and salt becomes a body of water. Here's the story of how, somewhere in Egypt, a sea of sand was imagined to become a sea of water and something much more. The plan is simple on paper. Cut a channel through the desert and let gravity do the work. Seawater would rush into the Qattara Depression, a massive bowl sitting hundreds of feet below sea level, turning a desert into a lake. But for a variety of reasons, it's much easier said than done, which is why we need to get familiar with the topography first. The Mediterranean Sea comes with its cool breeze. Its beautiful, pristine waters are lovely to look at, too. However, there's a place in Egypt where the heat and landscape changes so drastically in a matter of a couple of hundred miles that it's almost impossible to believe there is a sea close by. Standing far off, the Qattara Depression may trick you into thinking it's a large sea of water, but don't be deceived. What you're seeing is a mirage, a testament to the boiling heat from the ground crust of sand, salt, and dust. The sea you'd see would only keep shifting until you never catch it. Almost depressing. Now, a little backstory into the Qattara Depression, or desert, allows us to appreciate it even more. The Qattara Desert is the kind of place that makes you stop and rethink your life choices a little. Not in a dramatic movie way, but in a quiet, so this is what real silence sounds like way. No buildings, no trees, no random roadside shops selling drinks, just open space that keeps going like it has no plans to stop for anybody. Traveling through the Qattara is not something you do on a whim. You need gear, you need planning, you need water, a lot of water. Even the most experienced travelers think twice before stepping too far without preparation. The desert can go from, this is calm, to, this is not at all calm. In minutes, the heat during the day is no joke. The cold at night arrives like it has a personal grudge. The place keeps you alert and humble at the same time. People lived around parts of this desert centuries ago, and it is always surprising to realize that. Archaeologists have found clues that trade routes once passed close to these sands. You imagine caravans moving across the terrain, traders resting after long distances, and camels doing what camels do best. You can almost picture the scene: dust rising, sun setting. People are complaining quietly because they have been walking since morning. The human part of the desert's history makes it feel less distant and more familiar. A surprising thing about the Qattara Desert is how quickly the scenery changes. One moment, it is smooth sand. The next moment, some rocks look like someone dropped them there by mistake. Some cliffs stand tall, while the dunes keep shifting below them. You walk a little more and start seeing the whole thing like a natural maze. Even experienced desert travelers get caught off guard by how unpredictable it is. The land keeps remixing itself. Measuring about 7,000 square miles, the Qattara Depression is a vast area of desert, about 200 feet below sea level. Given how vast, seemingly unlivable, and empty it is, it became an area of great potential that many have wondered what it could be used for. From politicians to engineers and scientists, the question of how this depression could be used to do something remarkable has not stopped coming up. Several solutions and ideas have come, but talk, as they say, is cheap. On one hand, it looks impossible to believe, but obsession is a real thing. The idea of a Qattara Sea has been revisited over and over, from colonial officers sketching maps after World War I to Cold War planners considering nuclear excavations. In the 1920s, British surveyors like John Ball mapped the area meticulously, noticing its strange topography and low-lying bowl shape. They jotted down notes, wondering whether nature's misplaced basin could be turned into an opportunity. Then came the 1950s, when some engineers and American planners entertained something so wild it sounded absurd. Atoms for peace, literally using controlled nuclear explosions to blast the Qattara into a water-ready depression. Frederick Bassler and international advisory councils in the 1960s also threw their hats in the ring, producing reports filled with diagrams of canals, dams, and turbines. Some plans estimated construction would take decades, but promised an almost utopian combination: new electricity, water security, and jobs for thousands. Why has this idea persisted despite its audacity and technical headaches? Partly it's the promise of power. Literally, the depression sits below sea level, meaning gravity alone could drive water through turbines to generate gigawatts of electricity. In another light, it's the lure of climate management. How? A massive body of water in the desert could theoretically modulate local temperatures, increase humidity, and even alter rainfall patterns. And partly it's the dream of population relief, creating habitable, farmable land in a country where the Nile is the life source but is already overtaxed. Enough of the nice talk now. Talk is cheap, remember. Between the Qattara Depression and the Mediterranean Sea is a wonderful Diffa Plateau. I mean, there's a reason the depression isn't naturally filled up already. The plateau is about 280 meters or 920 feet at its highest point and keeps the sea from the depression. Furthermore, World War II came with landmines that have not fully been removed. This means any work done there is a literal step away from death, if not properly dealt with. What if we got all this covered? Can we remove the Diffa Plateau now? Sure, it's just a couple of $1 billion here and there to move the rocks away. Some analyses even suggest higher costs. What about the nuclear approach that was suggested before? Thankfully abandoned. However, blasting the plateau away remains in the thoughts of many, even as recently as 2023 when a study was done to find out its feasibility. And yet humanity is nothing if not persistent. The Qattara Depression keeps calling engineers, planners, and policymakers. It's a siren song, a vast space promising energy, water, and opportunity. The idea has evolved from nukes to tunnels to gravity-fed canals, but the dream remains. You can almost hear it whisper across the salt flats. Just imagine what could be here. The first proposals weren't modest. In the 1920s and 30s, the British, curious and technologically confident, sketched preliminary canal routes from the Mediterranean to the Depression's floor. By the middle of the 20th century, engineers from America and Britain gave suggestions of using the difference in sea level as a means of generating electricity. Diverting water from the sea into the Depression with a drop of about 200 feet was perfect for installing a dam with turbines. Concerning creating the needed space, some went as far as proposing the use of controlled nuclear bomb blasts to aid excavation. While some ideas may appear good and others bizarre, remember this was a period of advancement with little idea of how advancements would affect future populations. While some had grand ideas, others wondered what the fuss was for. When some first hear about the idea of digging a channel into the Qattara region, the first reaction is usually, wait, for what exactly? And honestly, it is a fair question. The desert already looks like it has its own system and does not want anybody disturbing it. But the idea was simple on paper. If you bring water into a basin that sits far below sea level, it will stay there, and if it stays there long enough, it could turn into something useful. That was the original spark behind the plan. The Qattara Depression is one of the deepest natural land dips in Africa. Parts of it drop more than 100 meters below sea level, and someone somewhere looked at that and thought, so if we let water in, nature will basically handle the rest. In theory, it was a fascinating idea. Let seawater flow in, let it fill the basin, let it evaporate under the hot sun, and maybe use the whole process for energy. Simple. The kind of simple that sounds good until you try to do it. The first real push for this idea came in the early 20th century. Engineers, surveyors, and people who enjoyed drawing complicated diagrams sat down to look at the feasibility. They believed that if a channel could be made from the Mediterranean coast into the desert, water would rush in naturally. No pumps needed. Gravity would do all the heavy lifting. They liked that part a lot because anything that does not require engines, fuel, or constant maintenance automatically becomes 10 times more attractive. But here is where the story gets interesting. The terrain between the coast and the Qattara Basin is not friendly at all. It is not soft sand all the way. Parts of it are packed with stone, cliffs, and slopes that behave like they were specifically designed to stress anyone trying to dig through them. Imagine trying to cut a straight line through land that keeps arguing with your tools. Engineers who loved the project began to realize that it was not a simple just dig situation. It was more like bring everything you have and hope the land cooperates. The second issue was the heat. Machines do not like working under extreme temperatures. People like it even less. Any attempt at digging during the day would feel like trying to work inside an oven. At night, the temperature drops and then visibility becomes a new problem, so the project kept bouncing between possible and actually, hold on, let's rethink this. Despite all the challenges, the idea refused to die. It resurfaced repeatedly over decades. Each generation brought new hopes, new technology, new dreams. Someone would publish a report or a proposal, and the entire conversation would start again. The idea never stayed buried because it made sense from an energy perspective. By the 1960s, Frederick Bassler and his peers had mapped out potential sea surfaces, turbine placements, and inflow patterns. Still, on paper, engineers wondered how water would move swiftly into the Qattara Depression, possibly carving its own natural channel and creating the much-anticipated lake. Engineers constructed blueprints for state-of-the-art turbines and even went as far as calculating how much electricity would be generated from the whole concept. People liked the idea of clean energy long before the modern world started shouting about it, and this project looked like it could produce a steady source without burning anything. It was the kind of engineering dream that keeps researchers awake at night, sketching diagrams with excitement. The only problem was the minor issue of how exactly do we dig this channel without going broke or losing our sanity? One interesting twist in the story is that some planners suggested using explosives to cut a path through the tougher rock sections. This immediately raised eyebrows because using explosives near a coastline and open desert is the kind of suggestion that invites long committee meetings. And committee meetings invite more committee meetings. People debated the environmental risk, noise, cost, and possible unintended consequences. Ecologically speaking, there was another argument. Bringing seawater into a dry basin would change the entire environment of the region. Some argued that this would be fantastic. You could create new habitats. Birds would find new resting spots. Small marine organisms would enter the depression. Nature would adjust and maybe even flourish. Others were more cautious. They worried that saltwater would build up too fast. Evaporation could leave behind salt flats that would be difficult to manage. It might become more like a giant salt pan than a lake. This back and forth continued for years. It still continues, actually, but somewhere in the middle of all the debates, people started noticing an odd detail. If water entered the depression and continued evaporating, it would not just generate energy, it would also cause a cooling effect in the surrounding region. Evaporation requires heat, so if a large body of water kept evaporating daily, it would pull heat out of the air. Some models predicted that temperatures around the depression could drop slightly. This might support new plant growth, and if plants grow, animals show up, and then you suddenly have a green belt in the middle of the desert. It almost sounded too good to be true. Most of the scientists agreed that the idea had potential. The problem was convincing governments. Big projects need big money. They also need confidence. Nobody wants to sign a document saying, "Yes, please, dig a huge channel into the desert," unless they are very sure it will work. And with the terrain being unpredictable, many leaders stepped back and said, "Let's think about this a little more." They've been thinking for decades now. There is another twist that often gets overlooked. While people debate engineering, the desert itself continues to change. Wind moves dunes around, sand accumulates, rock formations shift. Any plan drawn 10 or 20 years ago needs updating. It's like planning to build a house on moving ground. The location is the same, but the details are constantly changing. Engineers hate that. They want stability. Deserts do not care. With the increase in modern technology, surveys began showing a clearer picture of the land also. While ideas appeared lofty, they were also workable. On paper, that is. This restarted the excitement. Suddenly, the idea was no longer seen as impossible. It shifted into the category of, okay, this might actually happen someday. Energy specialists became interested again because the world's demand for renewable power keeps increasing. Everybody is looking for clean energy sources, and this idea looked like something that could fit into the long-term plan of supplying power to large regions. The idea of letting nature generate electricity without any fuel still attracts attention today. It is simple, it is elegant, and it is surprisingly low maintenance once built. The environmental conversation also evolved. Instead of focusing only on risks, researchers began studying potential benefits. Some modeling suggested that a mix of shallow water and dry salt areas could create new microclimates, shade, moisture pockets, slight changes in wind flow. These could attract migrating species. Not all deserts are lifeless. They just need the right push to become active ecosystems, and a large water body could be exactly the boost needed. But to be honest, the idea remains on the shelf because no one wants to commit to the first step. Digging a huge channel into the desert is not something you do quietly. It is loud, expensive, and requires long-term planning. Any government attempting it must be ready to keep funding it for years without stopping, and most governments are not fans of long projects. They prefer things that show results quickly. This project is the opposite of quick. Modern engineering has made TBMs, tunnel boring machines, powerful enough to cut through the Diffa Plateau, and advanced simulations can predict evaporation rates with precision. These were two problems that, aside from money, were going on with making the Qattara Depression a lake. Furthermore, the depression isn't just empty land. It's a fragile system shaped over millennia. Blast a canal and you change the groundwater flows. Pump in the Mediterranean and currents shift, salinity rises, and ecosystems are disrupted. Evaporation could concentrate salts in unexpected ways. Even the perfect engineering might encounter unforeseen consequences. Weather, tectonics, or simple human error could upend the best-laid plans. By now, the Qattara project has entered what you could call the daydream phase. It's the part where engineers and environmentalists sit down, sip coffee, and say, imagine if we actually did this. Nobody's holding their breath. The desert is still quiet. The wind still moves the sand around like it owns the place, but the possibilities have become harder to ignore. Modern tools have given planners more confidence. Drones can map the terrain in minutes. Satellites can track subtle changes in the sand and rock. Computers can simulate water flow with surprising accuracy. While others have settled for the Qattara project as being a lofty idea, one that would fly with advancement in technology, energy experts are greatly pushing the idea with the promise of possibility today. They see it as a chance to generate electricity on a scale that few other renewable projects can match. Imagine turbines spinning continuously as water flows in. Solar panels are great, wind farms are fine, but the Qattara concept is like letting nature do the heavy lifting for you. It would require a massive upfront investment, yes, but after that it could run for decades without much intervention. The desert does most of the work. But there is also the human element to consider. Any massive project like this cannot exist in isolation. Workers need camps, engineers need tools, and someone has to manage logistics. This creates a temporary human settlement in a place that has barely any permanent residents. Local communities have also started to show interest. They imagine new jobs, potential tourism, and infrastructure improvements. Suddenly, a remote desert area that was mostly ignored could have roads, ports, and even small hotels. People joke that the first desert coffee shop could become a landmark, and while jokes are fun, the economic impact is real. Projects like this could change entire regions over time. The conversation around climate change has added another layer. Evaporation from the new water body would cool the local air slightly. Some experts suggest it could even affect wind patterns a little, not to the extent of remodeling the Sahara into a rainforest, far from that in truth, but rather it could at least turn desert wastelands into a place where life could thrive and possibly host a community or settlement. The personal stories around the project are also fascinating. Engineers talk about their late-night calculations, the arguments over channel width, and the debates about whether to use concrete or leave natural slopes. Field researchers tell tales of sandstorms rolling in unexpectedly, equipment getting buried, and the satisfaction of finally seeing measurements match predictions. These human elements make the project more than just a technical challenge. It is an adventure, a bit of chaos, and a lot of learning. Finally, the project has a way of inspiring imagination. Writers, artists, and even kids hear about it and start dreaming. They imagine sailing on a lake in the desert, or floating tiny boats with solar panels, or a giant bird sanctuary forming out of nowhere. It turns an arid, empty landscape into a canvas for creativity. That may sound trivial, but cultural and imaginative impact matters. Projects like this shape not only the land, but also how people think about the land. When looking in retrospect, the Qattara project is amusing to some, lofty to others, but inspiring to many. With the way the world is moving, it may not be too far before the project actually comes to life. The Qattara project signifies a battle between the modern world and its advancements. Yes, we have beautiful ideas, but we've seen how ideas spiraling unchecked could lead to more catastrophe. Does that mean our ideas should be silenced, or should they be allowed to thrive in a guided and safe manner? What do you think?